Chapter 1. And they never came back. Before we begin, the space beyond the Earth's atmosphere is vast and infinite. It constitutes millions of stars, and most of them have their own planetary system, just like our solar system. Our planet is the only one in the solar system that sustains life on it. Considering there are millions of planetary systems, do you think life does not exist on any of them? If there are other life supporting planets out there, what kind of living beings would they have? There have been many reports of people witnessing unidentified flying objects, UFOs. It is believed that they are driven by aliens who come to inspect life forms on Earth. The mystery of these flying objects has not been solved. Human beings have not been exploring outer space to find out if there is life on any other planet. Read this story to find out why you have not met an alien yet. It was actually Bart Cameron's mistake. He is the sheriff at Twin Gulch, and I am his deputy. I saw the flying saucer land. I was looking at the stars through the windows in the sheriff's office. It looked like a shooting star at first, but then the track of light broadened into two things that looked like rocket exhausts, and the thing came down without any sound. Two men got out. I couldn't say or do anything. Cameron never looked up from his desk. He was entangled in his tax calculations. There was a knock on the door. It opened, and the two men from the flying saucer stepped in. They were dressed in formal suits. They had a serious look on their faces. But Cameron just looked up when the door opened and frowned. He said, "What can I do for you folks?" And he tapped his hand on the desk, so it was obvious he did not have much time. One of the two men from the flying saucer stepped forward. He said, "We have had your people under observation for a time now." Pronouncing each word carefully, he added, "We have chosen this locality for our first contact because it is isolated and peaceful. We know that you are the leader here." "I am the sheriff, if that's what you mean. So what's your trouble?" "We have been careful to adopt your style of dressing. We have also learned your language." You could see the light break in Cameron. He said, "You guys foreigners?" The man from the flying saucer said, "Foreigners? Indeed we are. We come from the watery place you called Venus." Cameron never blinked an eye. He said, "All right, I'm at your service. What can I do for you?" "Please make immediate arrangements for the important men of our country to be brought here for discussions regarding your people joining our great organization." Slowly, Cameron got red. "Our people join your organization? We are already part of the UN and God knows what else. And I suppose I am to get the president here, eh? Right now in Twin Gulch. Send a hurry-up message?" The man said, "Speed is desirable. You want the parliament too? The Supreme Court? If they will help, Sheriff." And Cameron really went to pieces. He yelled, "I have no time for wise guys who come around, especially foreigners. If you don't get out of here pronto, I'll lock you up for disturbing the peace, and I'll never let you out." "You wish us to leave?" said the man from Venus. "Right now. Get out of here and back to wherever you are from, and don't ever come back." The two men looked at each other. Then the one who had done all the talking said, "It is not our way to force ourselves or our organization on people. We will leave and not return. We will girdle your earth in warning, and none will enter." They turned and left, and I knew that they would do what they had said. I knew that they would put a kind of fence around Earth, keeping others like them from visiting us. When they left, I got my voice back. I screamed, "Cameron, they are from outer space. What have you done? Why did you send them away?" "From space?" He stared at me. I yelled, "Look!" I pulled him to the window by the collar of his shirt. He was too surprised to resist, and when he saw what was going on outside the window, the breath went out of him. The men got into the flying saucer. Then it took off, and a reddish glow showed up on one side and got brighter as the ship got smaller till it was a shooting star again, slowly fading out. And I said, "Now they'll never come back." Cameron said, "I thought they were foreigners. They said they had to learn our language. I thought they were Italian." "How could they be Italian? They said they were from the planet Venus. They called it the watery place or something. You know, Venus has a lot of water on it. The planet Venus. His eyes got really round. He whispered, Venus. When they talked about the watery place, I thought they meant Venice. Chapter 2. George witnesses the birth of a star. Before we begin, on a clear and cloudless night, go to the terrace and observe the sky. You will see so many bright points in the sky that it is difficult to count them. The points which seem to twinkle repeatedly are all stars. Our sun is also a star. Since it is very close to Earth, we can see it very big in size from the ground. The universe consists of millions of stars, and many more are born and even die out with the passage of a long time. Let's read the story of a scientist, Eric, who explains a boy how stars are born through a visual presentation. George enters an abandoned house to find his lost pet. He finds out that the house is not abandoned and a girl called Annie lives there with her father, Eric. Eric is a scientist. Their house is in a mess, but George spots many interesting things in the clutter of books and papers. The thing that fascinates him the most is Eric's special computer. Eric's computer was small and glossy. It looked powerful and neat, the kind of computer you might find on a spaceship. Eric hit a couple of buttons on the keyboard, and the computer made a sort of humming noise while bright flashes of colors shot across the screen. You have forgotten something, said a strange mechanical voice, and George jumped out of his skin. Have I? Eric looked confused for a moment. Yes, said the voice. You have not introduced me. I'm so sorry, exclaimed Eric. George, this is Cosmos, my computer. George gulped but didn't say anything. You have to say hello to Cosmos, said Eric in a side whisper to George. Otherwise, he'll get offended. Hello, Cosmos, said George nervously. He'd never spoken to a computer before. Hello, George, replied Cosmos. I am the most powerful computer in the world. In the future, there will be computers more powerful than me, but there are none in the past or present. Sorry about this, Eric whispered to George. Computers can be a bit touchy sometimes. I'm cleverer than Eric, too, boasted Cosmos. Says who? Said Eric crossly, glaring at the screen. Says me, said Cosmos. I can compute billions of numbers in a nanosecond, in less time than it takes you to say Cosmos is great. I can compute the life of planets, of comets, of stars, and of galaxies. Before you can say Cosmos is the most impressive computer that I have ever seen, he is truly incredible. I can. All right, said Eric. Cosmos, you're the most impressive computer we have ever seen. Now can we get on? I want to show George how a star is born. No, said Cosmos. No, said Eric. What do you mean by no, you ridiculous machine? He must take the oath, said Cosmos. Good point. Clever, Cosmos, said Eric, leaving over to the blackboard. George, said Eric, to learn about the great subject in the whole universe, are you prepared to take a special oath? To promise that you will use your knowledge only for good and not for evil? This is very important, George. Science can be a force for good, but it can also do great harm. George stood up straighter and looked Eric in the eye. I am, he confirmed. Then Eric said, look at the words on the blackboard. It is the oath of the scientist. Read the oath out loud. The words of the oath made him very tingly with excitement, right down to his toes. He read the oath out loud, as Eric had instructed. I swear to use my scientific knowledge for the good of humanity. I promise never to harm any person in my search for enlightenment. I shall be courageous and careful in my quest for greater knowledge about the mysteries that surround us. I shall not use scientific knowledge for my own personal gain or give it to those who seek to destroy the wonderful planet on which we live. If I break this oath, may the beauty and wonder of the universe forever remain hidden from me. Eric clapped. Annie burst an empty crisp packet. Cosmos flashed a rainbow of bright colors across the screen. Well done, George, said Eric. Cosmos will now show us how a star is born. Welcome, said Cosmos, playing a little computerized fanfare. The room was getting darker and darker. Come and sit here. George called Annie, who had already settled herself on the big, comfortable sofa. George sat down next to her, and after a few seconds, he saw a tiny beam of very bright white light. It came directly from Cosmos's screen. The beam shot out into the middle of the room where it was wavered for a second before it began to sketch shape in the air. But that looks like a George began to speak. A window, said Eric proudly. Cosmos has made us a window on the universe. Watch closely. The beam of light disappeared, leaving the window it had drawn in the middle of Eric's sitting room, hanging in midair. It now looked exactly like a real window. It had a big sheet of glass in the pane and a metal frame. Beyond it, there was a view. And that view was not of Eric's house, or of any house, road, or town, or anywhere else that George had ever seen before. Instead, through the window, George could see an incredible, vast darkness, peppered with what looked like tiny bright stars. He started to try and count them. George, said Cosmos in his mechanical voice, there are billions and billions of stars in the universe. New stars are created all the time. They are born in giant clouds of dust and gas. I am going to show you how it happens. How long does it take for a star to be born? Asked George. Tens of millions of years, replied Cosmos. I hope you are not in a hurry, said Eric, sitting cross legged on the floor beside the sofa. Don't worry, George. I've speeded it quite a bit. You'll still get home for dinner. George noticed something about the view through the window onto the outer space. Not all of it was covered with little stars. In the bottom corner of the window, he saw a patch of total darkness, a place where not a single star shone. What's happening there? He pointed. Let's have a look, shall we? Said Eric. He pressed a button on a remote control, and the view through the window seemed to zoom towards the dark patch. As they got closer, George realized that an enormous cloud was hovering in that spot. The window kept moving forward until they were right inside the cloud itself, and George could see it was made of gas and dust, as Cosmos had said. What is it? He asked. And where is it? It's a huge cloud in outer space, much bigger than the ones in the sky, replied Eric, made up of tiny, tiny particles which are all floating around inside it. There are so many of these particles that the cloud is enormous. It's so big that you could put millions and millions of Earths inside it. From this cloud, many stars will be born. Inside the cloud, George could see the particles moving around, some joining together to form a huge lump of matter. These great lumps spun round and round, gathering even more particles all the time. But as the particles joined together, the spinning lumps weren't getting bigger. Instead, they seemed to be getting smaller, as though something was squeezing them. It looked like someone was making gigantic dough balls in outer space. One of these giant balls was quite close to the window now, and George could see it spinning round, getting smaller and smaller all the time. As it shrank, it became hotter and hotter, so hot that George could feel the heat from where he sat on the sofa, and then it started to glow with a dim but frightening light. Why is it glowing? Asked George. The more it shrinks, said Eric, the hotter it gets. The hotter it gets, the brighter it shines. Very soon it's going to get too hot. The ball exploded from the inside, throwing off its outer layers of burning hot gas in all directions. After the explosion, the ball was shining like the sun. Wow, said George. Is that the sun? It could be, Eric replied. That's how stars are born, and the sun is a star. When a huge amount of gas and dust combines and shrinks to become dense and hot, as you have just seen, the particles in the middle of the ball are so pressed together that they start to fuse or join up, releasing an enormous amount of energy. This is called a nuclear fusion reaction. It is so powerful that when it starts, it throws off the outer layer of the ball, and the rest is transformed into a star. That's what you just saw. The star was now shining steadily in the distance. It was a beautiful sight. George gazed at it, amazed by its power. Every now and then he could see huge jets of brightly shining gases sent hundreds of thousands of miles from the surface at extraordinary speeds. And the stars will keep on shining like this forever? He asked. Nothing is forever, George, said Eric. Poem 1. Wrights Made Us Fly. The Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, were two American geniuses who invented, built, and flew the world's first successful aeroplane. In 1903, the Wright brothers achieved the first powered, sustained, and controlled airplane flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Read this poem to find out the shared passion and dream of the brothers that resulted in the invention of winged machines. Said Orville Wright to Wilbur Wright, "These birds are very trying. I am sick of hearing them cheep cheep about the fun of flying. A bird has feathers, it is true. That much I freely grant. But must that stop us, W?" Said Wilbur Wright, "It shan't." And so they built a glider first, and then they built another. There never were two brothers more devoted to each other. They ran a dusty little shop for bicycle repairing, and bought each other soda pop and praised others' daring. They glided here, they glided there. They sometimes skinned their noses, for learning how to rule the air was not a bed of roses. But each would murmur afterward while patching up his brow, "Are we discouraged, W? Of course we are not, O." And finally, at Kitty Hawk in 1903, let's cheer it, the first real airplane really flew with Orville there to steer it. And kingdoms may forget their kings, and dogs forget their bites, but not till man forgets his wings will men forget their rights. Chapter 3. Towards a Sustainable Future. Before we begin, India is endowed with a good percentage of forest cover. In fact, forest areas in many parts of India are frequently visited by tourists from India and abroad. In the last few decades, wild animals have been hunted down at an alarming pace, resulting in a great reduction in their number. If the current rate of hunting and poaching continues, it would become very difficult to find a wild animal in the vast stretches of bare forests. Read the account of two documentary filmmakers who venture into thick forests of northeast India and record their experience. In a forest in the northeast, Deb set down his backpack of cane and bamboo at the base of the tree. Barefoot, clasped the trunk with his arms and legs and climbed up to about 9 meters high. Swiftly he slid across a thick horizontal branch and extracted a dead, red-bellied squirrel from the handmade trap he had set much earlier. Dave slid down the tree and was on the ground in less than 30 seconds. Viren took the squirrel, turned it over, and then placed it in his backpack. As we continued along the path, slipping and slittering across leaf litters, our compassions pointed out other traps on the way. Cameras in hand, we unsteadily crossed gushing streams on bridges made of a single tree trunk. Suraj mimicked the sounds of a barking deer fawn in distress, hoping to lure its mother. Dense forests crowded around us, making it impossible to see further than a few meters ahead. Our pace was much slower than we hoped. We continued to film the three young men and walked until evening before settling down at a clearing. Our Naishi companions brewed black tea and we sat around a small fire. As I gazed into the flames, I recalled how our sojourn in the Northeast began. In 2002, we filmed a very first rehabilitation of two Himalayan black bear cubs, orphaned by hunting in the Pake Tiger Reserve in Arunachal Pradesh. But sadly, we knew that even with a successful relocation attempt, nothing stopped the bears from being hunted down again as adults. Hunting is common in all the 7 northeastern states of India: Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Nagaland, Tripura, Manipur, Meghalaya and Mizoram. Deb, Biren and Suraj are from one of the Naishi tribes, who have been hunting in these forests for generations. The animal they hunt provide food and bones, furs and feathers for decoration and rituals during most festivals. Over the years, these tribals realized that the demand for the animals and birds they hunted was growing steadily. Hornbills, barbets, civets, squirrels, and many more rare species were making their appearance as dead meat at village markets with prices ranging from Rs 500 to 5,000.
A barking deer was sold for 6,000 rupees. But wild meat in the markets could only mean one thing, that forest after forest was going silent. There was a strange and empty sky where the wild birds used to fly. The next victim could very well be the forest itself. Now, our main goal was to document the extent of hunting and to determine whether there was any hope for the future of wildlife in the Northeast. In the process, we spent time with several tribes, including the Apatanis, Chakisang, and Naishis, and other tribes. We attended many of their festivals. We witnessed the traditional uses of animal parts, monkeys' furs, cats' claws, skins of bears and other animals, and the beaks of hornbill. On one occasion, while filming in a village, we came across a young boy who had just returned with a monkey kill. He wanted to use the fur to make a new case for his dao, which is a dagger. His reasons were simple. He was attending, and it was a matter of prestige. It would be much better than the other boys' daggers cases. In Chizami village, Nagaland, the interviews we did with different generations of hunters revealed some interesting facts about the decline in the wildlife here. The other hunters had intimate knowledge of the animals, their habitat, their food, even their smell. They could identify the animals from the photographs very easily. The younger hunters had much less information on the animals, and the teenage boys had seen hardly any mammals. This was enough to make them realize that hunting had reached crisis proportions. In January 2007, the tribal people of Ranchi village had arrived at a consensus. A self-imposed ban on hunting for 3 years was the only way to reverse the situation. Earlier in Konoma, Nagaland, the youth had taken it upon themselves to ban hunting as their forests were almost silent. Incredibly, they managed to sustain the ban for 10 years to revive the wildlife population and set up infrastructure for ecotourism. Many of the hunters spoke to us. They were willing to be wildlife guides if they were given a chance to make a livelihood. In Manas, Assam, there is already a successful example where exposures have turned into forest guides, bringing their intimate knowledge of the forest and its denizens to far better use. A powerful example of change. These are first steps, but positive ones, towards a more sustainable future. They have proved that protecting and preserving our forests and all creatures, great and small, is not a spectator sport. Chapter 4. Waste Management. Before we begin, management of waste is a very big and complicated problem of almost all the countries of the world. The first step in waste management is to segregate it into biodegradable and non-biodegradable wastes. Biodegradable waste is the organic waste that can be easily decomposed by natural agents. But non-biodegradable waste is inorganic and cannot be easily decomposed by natural agents. In fact, non-biodegradable waste constitutes the major part of the waste and it poses a greater threat to nature and the environment. While traveling from central Delhi towards Ghazipur, the first warning that you get is that you are approaching a landfill and the sight of the circling birds of prey. Then, the mound of waste becomes visible just before you are assaulted by its stench. You will also see a regular stream of smoke as decomposing waste generates the highly combustible methane gas. None of this bothers 10-year-old Chinu and 12-year-old Madan as they make their way to the top. For years, they have spent much of their time at the Ghazipur landfill, picking, sorting and selling waste. Without the protection of gloves or masks, the boys, like most rag pickers, are vulnerable to infections and illnesses. Often we cut ourselves on bits of discarded glass or metal, says Chinu. But they show no animosity towards the waste that helps them earn a living. The land just outside the landfill is dotted with markets, houses and places of worship. This violates the municipal solid waste rule, which states that landfills should be away from habitation clusters. Activists feel that we follow a flawed system of waste disposal and management. We need to discourage landfills as these dump sites catch fire easily. These fires are often difficult to extinguish because they burn through methane, plastic and other highly flammable substances. They say that landfill waste should be compacted and put under soil cover daily so that there is no fear of pollution or fire. Improper waste management causes problems such as air pollution from the burning of waste both at landfill sites and in open areas. It also causes pollution of groundwater when leached. The liquid residue that forms as water seeps through contaminated areas mixed with surface and groundwater. We need to learn from Sweden, which is a zero waste country. We need to learn from countries like Sri Lanka, which is segregating its waste, or Bhutan, where everybody is conscious not to pollute their land, says Swati Swayambhayal, Center for Science and Environment. There is a need to organize awareness programs for citizens to encourage segregation and recycling. Most activists push for segregation at source and feel a strict set of laws and fear of penalty is needed to make people comply. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan or Clean India Mission is a campaign started in India that aims to clean up the streets, roads and the infrastructure of India's cities, towns and rural areas. The campaign was officially launched on 2nd of October 2014, the 145th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi at Rajghat, New Delhi. It is India's largest cleanliness drive to date, with people from all parts of India participating in it. People from all the sections of the society have come forward to join this mass movement of cleanliness. From government officials to soldiers, Bollywood actors to sportspersons, industrialists to leaders have all lined up to take on this challenging task. They help by organizing cleanliness drives and launching awareness campaigns on community hygiene. The website My Clean India highlights the cleanliness work carried out by citizens. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has been receiving tremendous support from the people, taking the broom to sweep the streets, cleaning up the garbage, focusing on sanitization, and maintaining a hygienic environment have become a practice. The people of Maharashtra's Navlewadi village had faced a massive scarcity of clean water in the past. But now, the village has an abundance of water. This change occurred when the people got together and built a 35,000-litre water tank and installed water pipelines. The villagers also cleaned up the surroundings. Inspired by the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the villagers in Thrissur, Pusakkal, Kerala, decided to tackle the huge garbage dumps in their area. They put a proper waste management plan in place. They regularly removed waste, installed waste bins, and even set up a biogas plant. Now this village is a role model for the whole of Kerala. The village of Chauras is located on the banks of river Narmada in Madhya Pradesh. The area in and around the banks was full of garbage. The villagers had no clue that the water they drank was polluted because of the toxic waste from the garbage. Here too, it was the people who came together to clean the river banks. The village has clean drinking water now, and the river banks are clean. In many villages across India, it is the women and the children who are helping to create awareness on cleanliness. The women take part in the cleaning programs because they believe that their children are the future of the villages, and that as mothers, it is important for them to set an example. Students in primary schools are taught the importance of cleanliness, and they, in turn, spread the message to their families. The objectives of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan also include eliminating open defecation through the construction of individual and community-owned toilets. In the Jehanabad district of Bihar, nearly 14,000 women brought about a social change by coming together to clean up their surroundings and convincing villagers to build toilets. The residents of Rajasthan's Chittorgarh, Bhilwara and Udaipur districts now have individual toilets in their homes. The collective effort by the people has resulted in the construction and use of more than 3,000 toilets in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. In Haryana, the importance of building toilets was spread through billboards, posters and radio advertisements. By inviting people to participate in the drive, the Swachhata Abhiyan has turned into a national movement. Citizens are now becoming active participants in cleanliness activities across the nation. The dream of a clean India, once seen by Mahatma Gandhi, has begun to take shape. Poem 2. Her Head. Before we begin, there is nothing more essential to life on earth than water. Yet, in many countries of the world, there is an acute shortage of water resulting in water crisis. People are struggling to access the quantity and quality of water they need for various purposes. Access to clean water is a stepping stone to a country's development. Good hygiene and sanitation follows when people get an adequate supply of clean water. It is therefore the need of the hour to conserve water and put an end to all the wasteful practices that lead to a reduction or depletion of this precious resource. Near Ekuvukeni in Natal, South Africa, a woman carries water on her head. After a year of drought, when one child is 3 is at risk of death, she returns from a distant well carrying water on her head. The pumpkins are gone, the tomatoes are withered, yet the woman carries water on her head. The cattle kraals are empty, the goats gaunt, no milk now for children, but she is carrying water on her head. The engineers have reversed the river. Those with power can keep their power, but the woman is carrying water on her head. In the homelands, where the dusty crowds watch the empty roads for water trucks, one woman trusts herself with treasure and carries water on her head. The sun does not distort her, not the dried earth that blows against her, as she carries the water on her head. In a huge and dirty pail with an idle handle resting on a narrow can, this woman is carrying water on her head. This woman who girds her neck with safety pins, this one who carries water on her head, trusts her own head to bring to her people what they need now between life and death. She is carrying them water on her head. Chapter 5, Tea Gardens of Assam. Before we begin, tea is one of the most popular drinks. It is the most common beverage consumed in the world, second only to water. Tea has become more than just a drink. It has become an experience to be shared within family and social gatherings. The story in this chapter will help you know some facts about this beverage. Raghav, a youngster from Assam, is Rohan's classmate at school in Delhi. Raghav's father is the manager of a tea garden in Upper Assam, and Raghav has invited Rohan to visit his home during the summer vacation.
Chai garam, chai garam, a vendor called out in high-pitched voice.
He came up to their window and asked, Saab, chai? Give us 2 cups, Raghav said. They sipped the steaming hot liquid. Almost everyone in their compartment was drinking tea. Do you know that over 80 crore cups of tea are drunk every day throughout the world? Rohan said. Whew! Exclaimed Raghav. Tea really is very popular. The train pulled out of the station. Raghav buried his nose in his detective book again. Rohan too was an ardent fan of detective stories, but at the moment he was keen on viewing the beautiful scenery. It was green, green everywhere. Rohan had never seen so much greenery before. Then the soft green paddy fields gave way to tea bushes. It was a magnificent view. Against the backdrop of densely wooded hills, a sea of tea bushes stretched as far as the eye could see. Dwarfing the tiny tea plants were tall, sturdy shade trees, and amidst the orderly rows of bushes busily moved doll-like figures. In the distance was an ugly building with smoke billowing out of tall chimneys. Hey, a tea garden! Rohan cried excitedly.
Raghav, who had been born and brought up on a plantation, didn't share Rohan's excitement.
Oh, this is the tea country now, he said. Assam has the largest concentration of plantations in the world. You will see enough gardens to last you a lifetime. I have been reading as much as I could about tea, Rohan said. No one really knows who discovered tea, but there are many legends. What legends? Well, there's one about a Chinese emperor who always boiled water before drinking it. One day, a few leaves of the twigs burning under the pot fell into the water, giving it a delicious flavor. It is said they were tea leaves. Tell me another, scoffed Raghav. We have an Indian legend too. Bodhidharma, an ancient Buddhist ascetic, cut off his eyelids because he felt sleepy during meditation. 10 tea plants grew out of the eyelids. The leaves of these plants, when put in hot water and drunk, banished sleep. Tea was first drunk in China, Rohan added, as far back as 2700 BC. In fact, words such as tea, chai, and chini are from Chinese. Tea came from Europe only in the 16th century and was drunk more as medicine than as beverage. The train clattered into Mariani Junction. The boys collected their luggage and pushed their way to the crowded platform. Raghav's parents were waiting for them. Soon they were driving towards Thekiabadi, the tea garden managed by Raghav's father. An hour later, the car veered sharply off the main road. They crossed the cattle bridge and entered Thekiabadi tea estate. On both sides of the gravel road were acre upon acre of tea bushes,
all neatly pruned to the same height.
Groups of tea pluckers with bamboo baskets on their backs wearing plastic aprons were plucking the newly sprouted leaves. Raghav's father, Mr. Barua, slowed down to allow a tractor pulling a trailer load of tea leaves to pass. This is the second flush or sprouting period, isn't it, Uncle? Rohan
It
asked.
lasts from May to July and yields the best tea.
You seem to have done your homework before coming. Raghav's father said in surprise. Yes, Uncle, Rohan admitted, but I hope to learn much more while I'm here. Chapter 6. The Diary of a Young Girl. Before we begin, also known as the Diary of Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl is a book consisting of diary entries in Dutch language by Anne Frank while she and her family were in hiding for 2 years when their country Netherlands was occupied by the German Nazi. Anne and her family were finally caught and taken out of their hiding in 1944. They were taken to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp where Anne reportedly died due to typhus. The only survivor in the family, Otto Frank, Annie's father, got the diary and it was published in more than 60 languages. Sunday, June 14, 1942. I'll begin from the moment I got you. The moment I saw you lying on the table among my other birthday presents. I went along when you were bought, but that doesn't count. On Friday, June 12, I was awake at 6 o'clock, since it was my birthday. But I'm not allowed to get up at that hour, so I had to control my curiosity until 6:45. When I couldn't wait any longer, I went to the dining room, where Moochie, the cat, welcomed me by rubbing against my leg. A little after 7, I went to Daddy and Mama, and then to the living room to open my presents. And you were the first thing I saw, maybe one of the nicest presents. Then a bouquet of roses, some peonies, and a potted plant. From Daddy and Mama, I got a blue blouse, a game, a bottle of grape juice, which to my mind tastes a bit like wine. After all, wine is made from grapes. A puzzle, a jar of cold cream, 2.50 guilders, and a gift certificate for 2 books. I got another book as well, Camera Obscura, but Margot already has it, so I exchanged mine for something else. A platter of homemade cookies, which I made myself, of course, since I've become quite an expert at baking cookies. Lots of candy, and a strawberry tart from Mother. And a letter from Grammy. Right on time. But of course, that was just a coincidence. Then Haneli came to pick me up, and we went to school. During recess, I passed our cookies to my teachers and my class, and then it was time to get back to work. I didn't arrive home until 5. Since I went to gym with the rest of the class. I'm not allowed to take part because my shoulders and hips tend to get dislocated. As it was my birthday, I got to decide which game my classmates would play, and I chose volleyball. Afterward, they all danced around me in a circle and sang happy birthday. When I got home, Sani Lederman was already there. Iles Wanger, Haneli Golsar, and Jacqueline Van Marsen came home with me after gym. Since we are in the same class, Haneli and Sani used to be my 2 best friends. People who saw us together used to say, "There goes Anne, Han and San." I only met Jacqueline Van Marsen when I started at the Jewish Lyceum, and now she is my best friend. Iris is Haneli's best friend, and San goes to another school and has friends there. They gave me a beautiful book, Dutch Sagas and Legends, but they gave me volume 2 by mistake. So I exchanged 2 other books for volume 1. Aunt Helene bought me a puzzle, Aunt Stephanie a darling brooch, and Aunt Lenny a terrific book, Daisy Goes to the Mountains. This morning I lay in the bathtub, thinking how wonderful it would be if I had a dog like Rin Tin Tin. I'd call him Rin Tin Tin too, and I'd take him to school with me, where he could stay in the janitor's room or by the bicycles rack when the weather was good. Sunday, June 21, 1942. Dearest Kitty, our entire class is quacking in its boots.
The reason, of course, is the upcoming meeting in which the teachers decide who will be promoted to the next grade and who will be kept back. Half the class is making bets. GZ and I laugh ourselves sick at the two boys behind us, Cian and Jacques Cockernoot, who have staked their entire vacation savings on their bet. From morning to night, it's you are going to pass. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Even G is pleading glances, and my angry outbursts can't calm them down. If you ask me, there are so many dummies that about a quarter of the class should be kept back. But teachers are the most unpredictable creatures on earth. Maybe this time they'll be unpredictable in the right direction for a change. I'm not so worried about my girlfriends and myself. We'll make it. The only subject I'm not sure about is math. Anyway, all we can do is wait. Until then, we keep telling each other not to lose heart. I get along pretty well with all my teachers. There are 9 of them, 7 men and 2 women. Mr. Keesing, the old fogey who teaches math, was mad at me for the longest time because I talked so much. After several warnings, he assigned me extra homework. An essay on the subject, a chatterbox. A chatterbox? What can you write about that? I'd worry about that later. I decided I jotted the assignment in my notebook, tucked it in my bag, and tried to keep quiet. That evening, after I had finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. Anyone could ramble on and leaving big spaces between the words, but the trick was to come up with the convincing arguments to prove the necessity of talking. I thought and thought, and suddenly I had an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me and was satisfied. I argued that talking is a female trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control, but that I would never be able to break myself of the habit since my mother talked as much as I did, if not more, and that there's not much you can do about inherited traits. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my argument, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next class, he assigned me a second essay. This time, it was supposed to be on an incorrigible chatterbox. I handed in it, and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole classes. However, during the 3rd class, he'd finally had enough. And Frank, as punishment for talking in the class, write an essay entitled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. The class roared. I had to laugh too, though I had nearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterbox. It was time to come up with something else, something original. My friend Stan, who is good at poetry, offered to help me write the essay from beginning to end in verse. I jumped for joy. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I'd make sure the joke was on him. I finished my poem, and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings, who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. Luckily, Keesing took the joke the right way. He read the poem to the class, adding his own comments and to several other classes as well. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. On the contrary, Keesing's always making jokes these days. Your Annie.
Poem 3. Feelings. Before we begin, bullies are those people of your age who are unkind and make fun of you every now and then. These bullies search for a soft target, a person who is sensitive, introvert, and gullible. The child in this poem is bullied by his peers and he is hurt. Let's read his poem to find out what his mother advises when he shares his feelings with her. Mom, why would kids say stuff to hurt me, most especially when they are not true? Don't they even care about feelings? Can't they think first before they hurt you? She said those who do that are unhappy. They are very angry deep down inside. But they just don't know how to fix that, so they pick on kids smaller in size. Mom said life is too short to stay angry. If you let it, anger gets bigger each day. But happy grows faster than angry can, so be happy. It's better that way. Mom said just stand up for my feelings, but do it nice and don't get all mad. I try, but it sure isn't easy being nice when they have made me so sad. Poem 3 Feelings. Before we begin, bullies are those people of your age who are unkind and make fun of you every now and then. These bullies search for a soft target, a person who is sensitive, introvert, and gullible. The child in this poem is bullied by his peers and he is hurt. Let's read his poem to find out what his mother advises when he shares his feelings with her. Mom, why would kids say stuff to hurt me, most especially when they are not true? Don't they even care about feelings? Can't they think first before they hurt you? She said, those who do that are unhappy. They are very angry deep down inside. But they just don't know how to fix that, so they pick on kids smaller in size. Mom said life is too short to stay angry. If you let it, anger gets bigger each day. But happy grows faster than angry can, so be happy. It's better that way. Mom said just stand up for my feelings, but do it nice and don't get all mad. I try, but it sure isn't easy being nice when they have made me so sad. Poem 3 Feelings. Before we begin, bullies are those people of your age who are unkind and make fun of you every now and then. These bullies search for a soft target, a person who is sensitive, introvert, and gullible. The child in this poem is bullied by his peers and he is hurt. Let's read his poem to find out what his mother advises when he shares his feelings with her. Mom, why would kids say stuff to hurt me, most especially when they are not true? Don't they even care about feelings? Can't they think first before they hurt you? She said, those who do that are unhappy. They are very angry deep down inside. But they just don't know how to fix that, so they pick on kids smaller in size. Mom said life is too short to stay angry. If you let it, anger gets bigger each day. But happy grows faster than angry can, so be happy. It's better that way. Mom said just stand up for my feelings, but do it nice and don't get all mad. I try, but it sure isn't easy being nice when they have made me so sad. Poem 3 Feelings. Before we begin, bullies are those people of your age who are unkind and make fun of you every now and then. These bullies search for a soft target, a person who is sensitive, introvert, and gullible. The child in this poem is bullied by his peers and he is hurt. Let's read his poem to find out what his mother advises when he shares. Chapter 7 The Lady or the Tiger. Before we begin, have you ever had to choose between two options that looked equally scary? Let's read the story about a young princess who makes a hard choice after days and nights of anguished deliberation. In the olden times, there lived a semi barbaric king with an authority so irresistible that, at his will, he turned his fancies into facts. When he decided upon anything, the thing was done. One of his fancies was to use the public arena as an agent of poetic justice. For this purpose, the king built a vast amphitheater with encircling galleries, mysterious walls, and unseen passages. Here, crime was punished or virtue rewarded by the decrees of an impartial and incorruptible chance. When a subject was accused of a crime of sufficient importance to interest the king, public notice was given that on an appointed day, the fact of the accused person would be decided in the king's arena. When the people had assembled in the galleries, the king, surrounded by his court, took his seat high up on one side of the arena. At his signal, a door beneath him opened, and the accused subject stepped out into the amphitheater. Directly opposite to him, on the other side of the enclosed space, were two doors, exactly alike and side by side. It was the duty and the privilege of the person on trial to open one of the doors. He could open either door he pleased, subject to no guidance or influence. If he opened the one, there came out of it a hungry tiger, the fiercest and most cruel that could be procured, which immediately sprang upon him and tore him to pieces as a punishment for his guilt. But if the accused person opened the other door, there came forth from it a lady, the most suitable to his years and station that his majesty could select from among his fair subjects. And to this lady he was immediately married, as a reward of his innocence, whether he liked it or not. This was the king's semi barbaric method of administering justice. Its perfect fairness is obvious. The criminal opened either door he pleased without having the slightest idea whether in the next instant he was to be devoured or married. On some occasions, the tiger came out of one door and on some out of the other. The decisions of this tribunal were not only fair but also immediately effected. The accused person was instantly punished if he found himself guilty, and if innocent, he was rewarded on the spot. There was no escape from the judgment of the king's arena. When the people gathered together on one of the great trial days, they never knew whether they were to witness a bloody slaughter or a hilarious wedding. Thus, the masses were entertained and pleased, and the thinking part of the community could bring no charge of unfairness against this plan. Did the accused person not have the whole matter in his own hands? The semi barbaric kings had a daughter with a soul as imperious as his own. As is usual in such cases, she was the apple of his eye, and was loved by him above all. Among his courtiers was a young man of fine blood but low rank, who was in love with the princess. The royal maiden was well satisfied with her lover, for he was handsome and brave. His love affair moved on happily for many months, until one day the king happened to discover its existence. He did not hesitate to do his duty. The youth was immediately cast into prison, and a day was appointed for his trial in the king's arena. This, of course, was an especially important occasion, as His Majesty and all the people were greatly interested in the proceedings and development of this trial. The young man and the princess loved each other, but the king would not allow any fact of this kind to interfere with the working of his tribunal, in which he took such great delight and satisfaction. No matter how the affair turned out, the youth would be disposed of, and the course of events would determine whether or not the young man had done wrong in allowing himself to love the princess. The appointed day arrived. From far and near, the people gathered and thronged the great galleries of the arena. The king and his court took their places opposite the twin doors. All was ready. The signal was given. A door opened, and the lover of the princess walked into the arena. Tall, beautiful, fair, his appearance was greeted with a low hum of admiration and anxiety. Half the audience had not seen so handsome a youth. No wonder the princess loved him. What a terrible thing for him to be there. The youth advanced into the arena and turned, as the custom was, to bow to the king, his eyes fixed upon the princess, who sat to the right of her father. But for the barbarism in her nature, the princess could not bear to have been there. For days she had thought of nothing but this great event. With more power, influence, and force of character than anyone who had ever before been interested in such a case, she had possessed herself of the secret of the doors. She knew behind which of those stood the cage of the tiger with its open front, and in which waited the lady. And not only did she know in which room stood the lady ready to emerge, blushing and radiant, should her door be opened, but she knew who the lady was. It was one of the fairest and the loveliest maidens of the court who had been selected as the reward of the accused youth, should he be proved innocent of the crime of aspiring to one so far above him. And the princess hated her. Often had she seen or imagined that she had seen this fair creature throwing glances of admiration upon her lover, and sometimes she thought these glances were returned. The girl was lovely, but she had dared to raise her eyes to the loved one of the princess. With all the intensity of the savage blood inherited from her barbaric ancestors, she hated the woman who trembled behind that silent door. When her lover turned and looked at her, and his eyes met hers as she sat there, pale and white, he saw, by that power of perception which is given to those whose souls are one, that she knew behind which door crouched the tiger and behind which stood the lady. He had expected her to know it. He understood her nature, that she would never rest until she had made plain to herself this thing, hidden to all onlookers, even to the king. Then it was that his quick and anxious glance asked the question, which? It was as plain to her as if he shouted it from where he stood. There was not an instant to be lost. The question was asked in a flash. It must be answered in another. Her right arm lay on the cushioned parapet before her. She raised her hand and made a slight quick movement towards the right. No one but her lover saw her. Every eye but her was fixed on the man in the arena. He turned, and with a firm and rapid step, he walked across the empty space. Every heart stopped beating. Every breath was held. Every eye was fixed immovably upon that man. Without the slightest hesitation, he went to the door on the right and opened it. Now, the point of the story is this: did the tiger come out of that door, or did the lady? The more we reflect on this question, the harder it is to answer. The decision of the question depended upon the hot blooded, semi barbaric princess, her soul at a white heat beneath the combined fires of despair and jealousy. She had lost him, but who should have him? How often, in her waking hours and in her dreams, had she started in wild horror and covered her face with her hands as she thought of her lover opening the door on the other side of which waited the cruel fangs of the tiger. But how frequently had she seen him at the other door? How she had gnashed her teeth and torn her hair when she saw his start of rapturous delight as he opened the door of the lady. How her soul had burned in agony when she had seen him lead her forth, his whole frame kindled with the joy of recovered life. And yet, that awful tiger, those shrieks, that blood. Her decision had been indicated in an instant, but it had been made after days and nights of anguished deliberation. She had known she would be asked. She had decided what she would answer, and without the slightest hesitation, she had moved her hand to the right. The question of a decision is one not to be slightly considered, and so I leave it with all of you. Which came out of the open door, the lady or the tiger? Chapter 8: The Hound of the Baskervilles. Before we begin, Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character created by the famous Scottish writer Arthur Conan Doyle. The mastermind detective, who called himself a consulting detective in the stories, Holmes first appeared in print in 1887 in a detective novel, A Study in Scarlet. He pursued criminals throughout Victorian and Edwardian London, the south of England, and continental Europe. Holmes is known for his proficiency with observation, forensic science, and logical reasoning while investigating cases. This story is set in the moors of Devonshire, England. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are investigating the mysterious death of Sir Charles Baskerville. The death was caused by a heart attack, but the local people think that Sir Charles' death is connected to a 200-year-old family curse. According to the curse, a monstrous demon hound dog roams the moors and seeks revenge against the Baskervilles. The life of Sir Henry Baskerville, the heir of Sir Charles, might also be in danger. Watson goes to Baskerville Hall first and meets four people who could be possible suspects. There is Barrymore and his wife. Then there is an archaeologist named Stapleton and his sister, Beryl Stapleton. Holmes, meanwhile, does his own investigation. He takes the help of Lestrade, a police detective. He visits Baskerville Hall secretly and finds a striking resemblance between Sir Hugo Baskerville, whose portrait hangs on the wall of the Baskerville Hall, and Stapleton. Sherlock is sure that Stapleton is actually a Baskerville, and with Sir Henry dead, he stands to inherit the Baskerville fortune. Though he has a motive for murder, Sherlock and Watson will have to catch him red handed to prove that he is guilty. More importantly, they have to have Sir Henry before it is too late. How will they do it? Read on to find out. We picked up Lestrade at the railway station and arrived at Baskerville Hall, paying off the carriage. We walked across the moor in the moonlight until we reached the path leading to Merripit House. My nerves were tensed as we walked with the cold wind on our face and dark empty spaces on either side. My God, it doesn't seem a very cheerful place, said Lestrade. We moved silently and carefully until Holmes stopped us about 200 yards from the house. This will do, he said. We can hide behind these rocks on the right. Watson, you know the place. Creep forward quietly and see what they are doing. I tiptoed down the path till I could look through the window. Sir Henry and Stapleton were sitting at the round table with coffee and wine in front of them. Stapleton was talking in a lively manner, but Sir Henry looked pale. You say the lady is not there? Holmes asked when I told them what I had seen. Yes, and there is no light in any other room either. A dense white fog hung over the great Grimpenmire and was slowly moving in our direction. Holmes turned his face towards it. That fog is the one thing upon earth that could have upset my plans. But it's already 10 o'clock. Our success and Sir Henry's life depends on his coming out before the fog is over the path. As the fog came curling around the house, Holmes dropped on his knees and put his ear on the ground. Thank heavens, I think I hear him coming. A sound of quick steps broke the silence. He started kneeling at the path. The steps grew louder and louder. Through the fog came the man we were waiting for. He walked swiftly along the path, passed close to where we were hiding, and went on. As he went on, he kept looking uneasily over his shoulders. Hist, said Holmes suddenly, and I heard the click of a revolver. Look out! It's coming! We started into the fog, and then I saw Holmes' lips part in amazement while Lestrade gave a yell of terror. I was frozen by the sight of the dreadful shape which came leaping towards us. It was a hound, an enormous coal black hound, but such a hound human eyes have never seen. Fire burst from its mouth. Its eyes glowed, and its jaws were outlined in flickering flame. It seemed like a hound from hell. With long bounds, the huge creature bounded down the track, following hard upon the footsteps of Sir Henry. We were so stunned that we let it pass. The Holmes and I both fired together, and the creature gave a hideous look, which meant that it had been hit. But it did not pause. Far away on the path, we saw Sir Henry looking back, his face white in the moonlight, his hands raised in horror. That cry of pain from the hound had blown our fears to the winds. If we could wound it, we could kill it. Never have I seen a man run as Holmes ran that night. Ahead of us, we heard Sir Henry scream and the deep roar of the hound. I was in time to see the beast spring upon its victim, hurl him to the ground, and reach for his throat. But the next instant, Holmes had emptied his revolver into the creature. With a last roar of agony, it rolled upon its back, its 4 feet pawing the air, and then fell limp on its side. Sir Henry lay in faint. He loosened his collar, and Holmes breathed a prayer of thanks when he saw that he had been in time. Already our friend's eyelids shivered, and 2 frightened eyes looked up at us. My God, he whispered. What was it? What in heaven's name was it? It's dead, said Holmes. We have laid the family ghost to rest, once and forever. In sheer size and strength, it was a terrible creature which lay stretched before us. Even now, the huge jaws seemed to be dripping with bluish flame, and the small curl, deep set eyes were ringed with fire. I touched its jaws, and as I held up my own fingers, they gleamed in the darkness. Phosphorus, I said, cleverly prepared to have no smell, as it would have no smell, as it would have interfered with the dog's sense of smell. We owe you a deep apology, Sir Henry, for letting you face this fright. I was prepared for a hound, but not for such a creature as this. And the fog gave us a little time to receive him. You saved my life. But we first endangered it. Are you strong enough to stand? He staggered to his feet, but he was still pale and trembling. No more adventures tonight, said Holmes. Wait here, and one of us will go back to the hall with you. We helped him to the shelter of a rock where he sat shivering while we walked towards Merripit House. They find Beryl, who is actually Mrs. Stapleton, bound and gagged in an upstairs room of Merripit House. She leads them to Stapleton's secret hideout. But by the time they reach the secret place, Stapleton is dead, having slipped and fallen into the mire. Poem 4. Night Voices. Before we begin, children are usually afraid of loneliness and darkness. This fear is sometimes so intense that they can even detect a minute sound or movement in the dark. Their imagination runs wild, and they can visualize strange figures or creatures in their mind. Let us read the poem in which a child notices some distant noise and whispering and talks to his father about it. Father, father, who is that a whispering? Who is it who whispers in the wood? You say it is the breeze, as it sighs among the trees. But there's something who whispers in the wood. Father, father, who is that murmuring? Who is it who murmurs in the night? You say it is the roar of the wave upon the shore, but there's someone who murmurs in the night. Father, father, who is that who laughs at us? Who is it who chuckles in the glen? Oh, father, let us go, for the light is burning low, and there is somebody laughing in the glen. Father, father, tell me what you're waiting for. Tell me why your eyes are on the door. It is dark and it is late, but you sit on so still and straight, ever staring, ever smiling at the door. Chapter 9, The Christmas Truce. Before we begin, World War I, 1914 to 1918, was one of the most gruesome and deadliest wars in the history of mankind. The warring countries, in their hunger to win, would send men, materials, ammunitions, and other necessities in order to maintain the continuity of the battle. The Christmas truce was a series of unofficial ceasefires along the Western Front of World War I around the Christmas in 1914. In the week leading up to the Christmas, French, German, and British soldiers crossed their trenches to exchange foods, greetings, and gifts. Let's read the letter of a British soldier to his sister, in which he talks about the unusual friendship that was forged between the British and the Germans during the truce. My dear sister Janet, it is 2 o'clock in the morning, and most of our men are asleep in their dugouts. Yet, I could not sleep before writing to you about what happened here on Christmas Eve. In truth, what happened seems almost like a fairy tale, and if I had not been through it myself, I would scarce believe it. While you and the family sang carols before the fire there in London, I did the same with enemy soldiers here on the battlefields of France. As I wrote before, there has been little serious fighting of late. Both sides are holding back until replacements come from home. We have mostly stayed in our trenches and waited. But what a terrible waiting it has been, knowing that any moment an artillery shell might land and explode beside us, killing or injuring several of us. In daylight, not daring to lift our heads above the ground for fear of getting hit by a soldier's bullet. Also, it has been raining every day, and we have to bail the water out with pots and pans from our trenches. The rain has made the trenches muddy. It splatters and coats everything and constantly sucks at the boots. Through all this, we could not help feeling curious about the German soldiers across the way. After all, they faced the same dangers and problems that we did and slogged about in the same muck. What's more, their first trench is only 50 yards from us. Between us lay no man's land border on both sides by barbed wire. Yet they were close enough. We sometimes heard their voices. Of course, we hated them when they killed our friends, but at other times we joked about them and almost felt as if we had something in common. And now it seems they felt the same. Just yesterday morning, Christmas Eve day, we had our first good freeze. We welcomed it as it froze the mud solid. Everything was tinged white with frost, while a bright sun shone over everything. Perfect Christmas weather. During the day, there was little shelling or rifle fire from either side. As darkness fell, the shooting stopped entirely. Our first complete silence in months. We hoped it promised a peaceful holiday, but didn't count on it. We had been told the Germans might try to catch us off guard and attack. I went to the dugout to rest and must have drifted off to sleep when my friend John suddenly shook me awake, saying, "Come and see." See what the Germans are doing. I grabbed my rifle, stumbled out into the trench, and stuck my head cautiously above the sandbag. I can never hope to see a stranger and more lovely sight. Clusters of tiny lights were shining all along the German line. What is it? I asked in bewilderment. And John answered, Christmas trees. So it was. The Germans had placed Christmas trees in front of their trenches, lit by candle or lantern like beacons of goodwill. And then we heard them singing, Still Nash, Hellish Nash. This carol may not yet be familiar to us in Britain, but John knew it and translated Silent Night, Holy Night. I've never heard one lovelier or more meaningful in that quiet, clear night, its darkness softened by a first quarter moon. When the song finished, the men in our trenches applauded. Yes, British soldiers applauded Germans. Then one of our own men started singing, and we all joined in. The first Noel, the angel did say. In truth, we did not sound as good as the Germans, with their fine harmonies, but they responded with enthusiastic applause and then began another. O Tannenbaum, O Tannenbaum. Then we replied, O come all ye faithful. But this time they joined in, singing the words in Latin. Adest Fidel. Britain and Germany harmonizing across no man's land. I would have thought nothing could be more amazing. But what came next was even more so. English, come over. We heard one of them shout. You no shoot, we no shoot. We looked at each other in bewilderment. Then one of us shouted jokingly, You come over? To our astonishment, we saw two figures rise from a trench, climb over their barbed wire, and advance unprotected across no man's land. One of them called, Send officer to talk. I saw one of our men lift his rifle, and no doubt the other side did the same. But a captain called out, Hold your fire! Then he climbed out and went to meet the Germans halfway. We heard them talking, and a few minutes later, the captain came back and announced, We have agreed that there will be no shooting before midnight tomorrow. But soldiers are to remain on duty, and the rest of you stay alert. Across the way, we could make out groups of 2 or 3 men starting out of their trenches and coming towards us. Then some of us climbed out too, and in minutes, there we were in no man's land. Over 100 soldiers and officers of each side shaking hands with men we'd been trying to kill just hours earlier. Before long, a bonfire was built, and around it we mingled British khaki and German grey. Only a couple of our men knew German, but more of the Germans knew English. I asked one of them why that was so. Because many have worked in England, he said. Before this, I was a waiter at the Hotel Cecil. Perhaps I waited at your table. Perhaps you did, I said, laughing. He told me he had a girlfriend in London and that the war had interrupted their plans of marriage. I said, Don't worry. We'll have you beat by Easter. Then you can come and marry the girl. He laughed at that and asked if I could send her a postcard he'd give me later, and I promised I would. Another German had been a porter at Victoria Station. He showed me a picture of his family back in Munich. His eldest sister was lovely. I told him I should like to meet her someday. He beamed and gave me his family's address. Even those who could not converse could still exchange gifts. Our tea for their coffee, our corned meat for their sausage, badges and buttons from uniforms changed owners, and one of our boys walked off with a spiked helmet. I myself traded a jackknife for a leather equipment belt, a fine souvenir to show when I get home. As it grew late, few more songs were traded around the fire, and then all joined in for I Am Not Lying to You, All Lang Syne. Then we parted with promises to meet again tomorrow, and there was even some discussion about playing a football match. I was just starting back to the trenches when an older German soldier clutched my arm. My God, he said, why cannot we have peace and all go home? I told him gently that you must ask your emperor. He looked at me searchingly and said, Perhaps, my friend, but we must also ask our hearts. So, dear sister, tell me, has there ever been such a Christmas Eve in all history? What does it all mean? This impossible befriending of enemies? Those soldiers may be decent fellows, but they follow orders, and we do the same. Besides, we are here to stop their army and send it home, and never could we shirk that duty. Still, one cannot help but imagine what would happen if the spirit shown there were caught by the nations of the world. Disputes may arise, but what if our leaders were to offer good wishes in place of warnings, songs in place of insults, gifts in place of reprisals? Would not all wars end at once? All nations say they want peace, yet on this Christmas morning, I wonder if we want it quite enough. Chapter 10: The Power of Determination. Before we begin, many of us have been endowed with the proper use of our sense organs, limbs, muscles, and other parts of the body. Unfortunately, not all people in the world live normally. Birth defects and accidents are the most common culprits that rob many people of their normal life. Such people need extra care, training, and encouragement so that they may overcome their disability and try to achieve some success. What special qualities such people should possess in order to get success? The one room school was heated by an old fashioned pot bellied coal stove. A young boy named Glenn Cunningham had the job of coming to school early each day so that he could use kerosene to start the fire and warm the room before his teacher and his classmates arrived. One cold morning, someone mistakenly filled the kerosene container he used with gasoline, and disaster struck. The class and the teacher arrived to find the schoolhouse engulfed in flames. Terrified on realizing that Glenn was still inside, they rushed in and managed to drag the unconscious boy out of the flaming room, more dead than alive. He had major burns over the lower half of his body and was taken to a hospital nearby. From his bed, the dreadfully burnt, semi conscious Glenn faintly heard the doctor talking to his mother. The doctor told his mother that her son would surely die, which was for the best. Really, for the terrible fire had devastated the lower half of his body. But the brave boy held on to life. He didn't want to die. Glenn made up his mind that he would survive, and somehow, to the amazement of the doctor, he did survive. Yet, when the mortal danger was past, he again heard the doctor and his mother speaking quietly. The mother was told that since the fire had destroyed so much flesh in the lower part of his body, it would almost be better if he had died, since he was doomed to be a lifetime cripple with no use at all of his lower limbs. His mother refused to let the doctors amputate. Once more, Glenn strengthened his resolve. He would not be a cripple confined to a wheelchair. He would walk. But unfortunately, he had no motor ability left from the waist down. His thin, scarred legs just dangled there, all but lifeless. Eventually, Glenn was released from the hospital. Every day afterwards, his mother and father would massage his little legs, but there was no feeling, no control, nothing. Yet his determination that he would walk was as strong as ever. When he wasn't in bed, he was confined to a wheelchair. One sunny day, his mother wheeled him out into the yard to get some fresh air. This day, instead of sitting there, he threw himself from the chair. Glenn pulled himself across the grass, dragging his legs behind him. He worked his way to the white picket fence, bordering their yard. With great effort, he raised himself up on the fence. Then, stake by stake, he began dragging himself along the fence, determined that he would walk. He started to do this every day until he wore a smooth path all around the yard beside the fence. There was nothing he wanted more than to develop life in those legs. Ultimately, through his daily massages, his iron persistence, and resolute determination, Glenn did develop the ability first to stand up, then to walk haltingly with help, then to walk by himself, then to walk by himself, and then miraculously to run. Glenn began to run to school. He ran for the sheer joy of running and being able to run. He ran everywhere that he could. The people in his town would often see him run by on his way to who knows where, try to catch up with him and smile. Rather, in college, Glenn made it to the track team, where his tremendous determination paid off. He eventually received the nickname the Kansas Flyer. In February 1934, in New York City famed Madison Square Garden, this young man who was not expected to survive, who would surely never walk, who could never hope to run, this determined young man, Dr. Glenn Cunningham, ran the mile in 4 minutes and 8 seconds, the world's fastest indoor mile. Later that same year, in a prestigious outdoor track meet, he shaved another 2 seconds off his record to run the world's fastest mile of that time. For you, a democracy. Before we begin, what do you mean by democracy? The poet expresses his idea of democracy, not just as a political system,
but as a way of life. Though he writes about America, the companionship and oneness he writes about apply to people everywhere. Let's read the poem and explore. Come, I will make the continent indissoluble. I will make the most splendid race the sun ever yet shone upon. I will make divine magnetic lands with the love of comrades, with the lifelong love of comrades. I will plant companionship thick as trees along all the rivers of America, along all the rivers of America, and along the shores of the Great Lakes, and all over the prairies. I will make inseparable cities with their arms about each other's necks, by the love of comrades, by the manly love of comrades. For you these, from me, O democracy, to serve you, ma femme. For you, I am trilling these songs, in the love of comrades, in the high towering love of comrades.
Chapter 11. The Tempest. Before we begin, born in 1564 in Stratford-upon-Avon, William Shakespeare was a very famous English poet, playwright and actor, also popularly called the Bard of Avon. Shakespeare's work include more than 36 plays, 154 sonnets, 2 long narrative poems, and a few other verses. For his work, William Shakespeare impacted the world over in the areas of literature, art, culture, theatre, and film. The Tempest is a famous play written by William Shakespeare, probably written in 1610 to 1611, and considered to be one of the last plays that he wrote alone. Characters: Boatswain, a sailor; Alonso, King of Naples; Gonzalo, a wise old counselor and nobleman; Sebastian, Alonso's evil brother; Prospero, the rightful Duke of Milan, whose dukedom has been usurped by his brother; Antonio, Prospero's evil brother, Duke of Milan; Miranda, daughter of Prospero; Ferdinand, Prince of Naples and son of Alonso; Ariel, an airy spirit. Act 1, Scene 1. A ship is in the middle of a storm. The captain comes in and talks with Boatswain. Captain: Boatswain? Boatswain: Aye, sir. Captain: Pipe all hands on deck. Be quiet about it, or we'll run ourselves aground. Hurry! He blows his whistle and dashes off. Sailors run in and haul at the ropes. Alonso, King of Naples, comes in, with Sebastian, his evil brother, Ferdinand, his son, Antonio, the Duke of Milan, Gonzalo, a wise old counselor, and other passengers. Alonso: Boatswain, safety! Where's the captain? Boatswain: You are in the way. Keep to your cabins. You are only helping the storm. Gonzalo: Be patient, dear fellow. Boatswain: I will when the sea does. Go! Don't get in our way. Do you want us all to sink? Sebastian: May you choke, you bawling dog. Boatswain: Do some work then. Heave ho! Raise the mainsail. Turn her around. Sailors enter, soaking wet and panicked. Sailors: It's no good. On your knees. It's hopeless. They leave. Everyone screams. Antonio: Let's all go down with the king. Act 1, Scene 2. The island in front of Prospero's cave. Prospero enters, followed by Miranda, his daughter. Miranda: Father, did your magic raise the storm at sea? If so, please make it stop.
Prospero, I have done nothing harmful. I've only done what is best for you. You, my daughter, who doesn't know anything about where you came from or who you are.
Miranda: I never thought of wanting to know more. Prospero: It's time I let you know. Give me a hand removing my magic cloak. She helps him remove the cloak and he puts it on a rock. Sit down. Now I'll tell you more. Miranda: Sometimes you've tried to tell me, but you have always stopped. It's left me wishing you'd tell me more. Prospero: It's time now. 12 years ago, I was the Duke of Milan, a powerful prince. Miranda: What happened to make us leave? Was it good or bad? Prospero: Both. Wicked things happened to make us leave. But we were also lucky. My brother, your uncle, was named Antonio. Next to you, I loved him more than anyone else in the world, and I trusted him to manage my kingdom. I left the business of government to him. But I was so busy reading books and improving my mind that I neglected everything else. Antonio started to think that he was the Duke because he was carrying duties on my behalf. Miranda: Oh heavens! Prospero: The King of Naples, an enemy of mine, listened to Antonio. They decided that I and my family should be forced to leave our country. They raised an army and one night opened the gates and hurried us through. Miranda, why didn't they kill us? Prospero, fortunately, Gonzalo, a nobleman in charge of getting us out, gave us some food, fresh water, fine clothes, and other things to help us alive. Out of kindness of his heart, knowing I loved my books, Gonzalo also gave me books from my library that I prized more than my kingdom. Miranda, thank heavens. And now, because I can't stop thinking about it, what is your reason for making this storm at sea? Prospero, oddly, good luck has brought my enemies to us. Ask no more questions. He puts his hand over her eyes. You feel sleepy. Miranda falls asleep, hypnotized. Prospero calls quietly. Come here, servant, come. I am ready now. Approach my Ariel, come. Ariel, all hail, great master. I come to answer your call. Be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, or to ride on the clouds, Ariel and all his fellow spirits are at your command. Prospero, Spirit, have you done what I ordered you to do? Ariel, everything. I boarded the king's ship. With fire, I struck terror. With lightning flashes, fire, explosion, and bold waves, I took care of everything. Everyone on board was afraid. The king's son, Ferdinand, was the first one to jump overboard. Prospero, but are they safe? Ariel, no one was hurt. And just like you ordered, I scattered them around the island in groups. I myself landed the king's son. Prospero, what have you done with the ship? Ariel, the ship is safely in the harbor. I hid it in Deep Cove. Prospero, you have carried out my orders exactly, but there is more work to do. We both have to make the most of our time between now and 6 o'clock tonight. Ariel, more hard work. Since you are so demanding, may I remind you of what you promised but have not given me? Prospero, what? Ariel, my freedom. Prospero, before the time is out, absolutely not. Ariel, remember that I have served you well. I've told you no lies, made no mistakes, and served without grumbling about it. You promised to give me my freedom a year early. Prospero, have you forgotten the torture I freed you from? Ariel, no. Prospero, the witch, Sycorax, imprisoned you in Split Pine Tree because you refused to obey her. In great pain inside the tree, you were imprisoned for 12 years. Then she died and left you there. Ariel, thank you for rescuing me. I'll do whatever you command. Prospero, do it, and in 2 days I will release you. I want you to make yourself a water nymph. You need to be invisible to everyone but me. Now go, do this, and return. Ariel leaves. Prospero looks at the sleeping Miranda. Wake up, dear one, wake up. Miranda, your strange story made me sleepy. Ariel enters, invisible, singing. Ferdinand follows. Prospero to Miranda. Open your eyes and tell me what you see. Miranda, looking at Ferdinand. Oh, what is it? It is very handsome, but it's a spirit. Prospero, no, girl. It eats and sleeps and has the same senses we have. This man you see was in the shipwreck. Except for being full of sorrow, you could call him nice looking. He has lost his friends and is wandering about trying to find them. Miranda, he's handsome, but I have never seen anything on earth so noble. Prospero, to the audience. It's turned out just as I hoped it would. To Ariel, Spirit, fine spirit, I'll free you in 2 days for this. Ferdinand, to Miranda. The heavens smile on me to meet you. May I know whether you live on this island? Tell me how I should act here. And then, and this is the most important question, are you a mortal woman or not? Miranda, I most assuredly am a mortal woman, sir. Ferdinand, I am the King of Naples. I have been mourning my father's death in a shipwreck. Miranda, oh, that's terrible. Ferdinand, yes, everyone on board died, including the Duke of Milan and his brave son. Prospero, to the audience. The Duke of Milan and his daughter could find you wrong if this were the right time. It is love at first sight, delicate Ariel. I'll set you free for this. To Ferdinand, may I have a word, sir? I think you are wrong. Miranda, why is my father so rude? This is the third man I've ever seen, and the first one who has turned my heart. May pity move my father to understand my heart. Ferdinand, If you don't have someone else, I'll make you Queen of Naples. Prospero, enough, a word with you. To the audience, they are in love with each other. So I must make this more difficult so he'll value the prize more. To Ferdinand, listen to me. You are fake and you have come to this island as a spy so you can take it from me. Ferdinand, no, upon my honor. Miranda, nothing bad could be in him. If evil were in such a handsome body, good would drive it away. Prospero, to Ferdinand, follow me. To Miranda, don't speak for him, he is a traitor. To Ferdinand, come, I'll chain your neck and feet together. Ferdinand, no, I won't let you do it. He draws his sword, but Prospero puts a spell on him, and he can't move. Miranda, oh father, don't hurt him. He's a good man, and not a threat to you. Prospero, do you think I think with my feet? To Ferdinand, put your sword up, you traitor. You are too full of guilt to be able to strike me. I can disarm you with this strike. He knocks Ferdinand's sword away with his magic wand. Miranda, father, please. Prospero, silence. Compared with him, most men are angels. To Ferdinand, come on, obey me. You are as helpless as a baby. Ferdinand, I feel like I'm in a dream. I've lost my father, the shipwreck, not to mention you. Even if I were in prison, it would be worth it to see this girl one more day. Free men can have all the space they want. I would have enough room in a jail if I could see her. Prospero, to the audience, it's working. To Ferdinand, come. To Ariel, well done, my fine Ariel. Follow me. I need something else done. Miranda, to Ferdinand, don't give up. My father is better than his words tell you. He's just acting strange right now. Prospero, to Ariel, you shall be free as the mountain winds, but you must do as I say. Ariel, I'll follow every word. Prospero, to Ferdinand, come follow me. To Miranda, don't say anything more in his favor.